You're flying for a week of all-inclusive by the sea to see pyramids and pharaohs. We'll check what country you're really flying to and what the army has to do with the tourist industry. On the map, you'll see a green tourist paradise and a red sea of poverty, where over 100 million people are struggling to stay afloat. This is Egypt. In this film, we'll travel along the Nile, from the slums of Cairo to the resorts of Hurghada and Sharm el-Sheikh, to answer one question: how is it possible that a country breaking tourism records is the same country where tens of millions can barely make it to the end of the month? And what role does the Egyptian army play in all of this? Tourist paradise. We start with the green part of the map. After the pandemic, Egypt climbed back to the top of the tourist charts. In 2023, around 14.9 million tourists came here, and in 2024, already 15.7 million. That's more than before the Arab Spring, the terrorist attacks, and COVID. These people bring something Egypt desperately needs: dollars and euros. Tourism revenues in 2024 reached about $15.3 billion, roughly 8.5% of Egypt's GDP. That basically means that the average tourist leaves close to $1,000 in Egypt during one trip, so around $130 to $140 a day if we count a typical one-week stay. The tourism sector gives work to about 2.7 million people, roughly 1 in 12 jobs in the country. Hurghada, Marsa Alam, Sharm el-Sheikh, they're separate bubbles. Inside, private beaches, aquatic with little umbrellas, dozens of pools, air-conditioned rooms, 24/7 buffets. Outside, often a completely different life. For the state, this is gold. Tourism is one of the main sources of hard currency. It underpins the repayment of multi-billion-dollar debts and the import of wheat, fuel, and medicines. But for many Egyptians, this paradise is something you look at from the outside, literally from behind the resort wall. How much does an average Egyptian earn? To understand the scale of this contrast, we need to zoom in on the wallet. According to various analyses, the average salary in Egypt in 2024 to 2025 is around $160 to $320 a month. The minimum wage, after a series of increases, from 2025 is 7,000 Egyptian pounds. That's just under $140 a month. Now add one more word: inflation. In recent years, Egypt's currency has been devalued multiple times, and food prices have literally exploded. Annual food price inflation has reached 60 to 70%. Some products, like onions, have gone up by over 400% in a single year. In 2023, Egypt was among the world leaders in food price inflation. Experts calculate something called a living wage, how much a family needs to earn to cover housing, food, transport, and basic needs. According to one such estimate, for rural areas in Egypt in 2024, this was about 8,800 Egyptian pounds per month. That means that even the new, increased minimum wage is below the real minimum needed for a decent life. And there's more. The official poverty rate, according to Egypt's statistics agency, CAPMAS, was 29.7% already in 2019/2020. Almost 1 in 3 Egyptians living below the national poverty line, before inflation really exploded. According to an analysis by the Institute for Security Studies, around 16 to 17% of Egyptians in 2023 were living below the international poverty line of $3.65 a day. These are millions of people for whom an all-inclusive resort is not a dream week by the sea. It's something completely unreal. A country that lives on 4% of optimizing. Egypt is a textbook example of a country squeezed along a single river. Around 95% of the population lives in the Nile Valley, the Nile Delta, and along the Suez Canal. And these areas make up only about 4 to 5% of the country's territory. What does that mean in practice? Insane population density. Some districts of Cairo or the Delta have tens of thousands of people per square kilometer. Enormous pressure on land and water. Every hectare used for a hotel or a luxury marina is a hectare that won't be used for housing or crops. When you look at satellite images, you see a sharp border, a narrow green ribbon, and right next to it, the beige of the desert. That's not a metaphor. It's a real line between life and death. Slums. Tourists will never see. Cairo is one of the biggest metropolises in the world. But behind the neon lights and new skyscrapers, there's another statistic. Studies estimate that up to 62% of Greater Cairo's area is made up of informal settlements. Around 11.8 million people live in them, making this one of the largest mega-slums on the planet. These aren't the classic movie-style favelas, but houses built without proper plans, often without permits, problems with waste collection, unstable access to water and electricity. And now, let's compare that with the image of a hotel where a single room has more square meters per person than an entire flat of an average family living in the slums. Tourist versus worker. Let's take a concrete example. A tourist from Europe pays for a one-week all-inclusive stay in a big Red Sea resort, around 2,500 to 3,000 złoty. That's about $600 to $750, plus flights, optional trips, souvenirs. In total, it easily reaches around $1,000. Meanwhile, a waiter or cleaner in such a hotel often earns around the minimum wage. After conversion, about $140 to $200 a month. Even if you add tips, his or her monthly income is still often lower than what a single tourist spends in 1 week. And here is the core paradox. Tourism really does help the economy. It creates jobs, brings in foreign currency, boosts construction. But it doesn't solve structural poverty, because the share that ends up in the pocket of an ordinary Egyptian is just a thin slice of that huge cake. Who really goods from the tourist paradise? It's easy to keep a simple picture in your head. I'm going to Egypt. I'm spending money. I'm leaving tips. I'm helping the local people. Right? Well, the truth is a lot more complicated. The path your money takes looks roughly like this. You buy the trip in Europe. Most of the money goes straight to the tour operator. The tour operator settles accounts with the hotel chain. Only at the very end are waiters, cooks, cleaners, security paid out of what's left. And this is where a key player steps onto the stage, one you won't see in any all-inclusive brochure. The Egyptian army. The army as a business empire. The Egyptian military isn't just tanks and barracks. It's a gigantic business conglomerate, which, according to some estimates, controls from 1/4 to even 40% of the country's economy. The army builds roads, bridges, tunnels, and the new capital in the desert, owns food companies, cement factories, fish farms, petrol stations, runs supermarkets, holiday centers, and even luxury hotels and seaside resorts. Since 2014, the military has been the contractor for around 1/4 of the total value of all public investments. Thousands of projects, highways, bridges, new cities. A hotel that belongs to the uniform. In Egypt, there is an entire network of hotels and resorts built by companies controlled by the army, from Red Sea resorts to luxury business properties. Some of them are open to regular tourists, some are marketed as family holiday spots, and some operate in partnership with international hotel brands. The Army's key advantage is that military companies are exempt from many taxes and customs duties. They use cheap conscript labor. They get land, permits, and state contracts more easily. If you're a private entrepreneur trying to compete with such an Army hotel, you're starting with several weights tied to your legs. $1 from the pool that flows into the Army's account. For you as a tourist, you won't notice a thing. The pool is just as blue, the drink just as cold. But from the perspective of the Egyptian economy, it means one thing. A significant share of the wealth created by tourism ends up concentrated in the hands of a single actor, the military establishment and the regime that controls it, the collapsed middle class. Egypt isn't just extreme poverty and luxury hotels. Between those two worlds, there used to be another layer, the middle class. People with 2 jobs, a small car, and a plan for their children's future. Today, they're the ones who feel the ground collapsing under their feet the most. In recent years, the Egyptian pound has lost value again and again. Prices of food, fuel, and rent have gone up much faster than wages. A family that once could save for an apartment or university for their kids now just counts, will we make it to the end of the month? And the only thing they're saving anymore are unpaid bills. This is Egypt's silent tragedy. People who believed they could work their way out of poverty wake up one day with the feeling they've been pushed back down by inflation, debt, and decisions they had no control over. And when a tourist flies home thinking, everything is so cheap here, for Egypt's middle class, the same country is becoming a more and more expensive place to live, and a worse and worse place to dream about the future. What next? Egypt is a country of both huge problems and huge potential. The problems are clear: rapid population growth, limited arable land and water resources, high debt and vulnerability to external shocks, wars, pandemics, global wheat prices. But there is also real potential. Over 100 million people, most of them young, a strategic location at the crossroads of Africa, the Middle East, and Europe, a tourism sector that already brings in billions of dollars and millions of jobs. So the real question is, will those dollars from the tourist paradise be used in a way that makes Red Egypt, the country of poor residents, slowly shrink? Or will they remain just a band-aid on wounds caused by inflation, debt, and the lack of serious structural reforms? 2 worlds of one country. Next time you see a TikTok or vlog from Hurghada, Sharm el-Sheikh, or Luxor, try to see 2 layers. Under the blue of the pool, the bills a waiter is trying to pay with his tips. Under the desert sand, the demographic pressure, poverty, and lack of prospects for millions of young people. Egypt is not just pyramids, coral reefs, and warm sea. It's also a country where the tourist paradise stands on very fragile social foundations. If you want more films like this, about countries that look like a postcard on Instagram but in reality are struggling with poverty and crisis, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell. And write in the comments, when you look at this map, red Egypt of the residents and green Egypt of the tourists, which part do you see first?